Hello, everyone. I wanted to talk about Arkham Knight. Wanted to talk about Batman in the Arkham series, more specifically in this game. I've completed it, got all of the achievements, did everything that I needed to, and so I just wanted to talk about it. Now, this video, this podcast type episode is going to be very spoiler heavy. All right. So if you're watching this, I hope that you've played the game and you've done everything that you wanted to do, because I'm gonna spoil a lot of story aspects. I would recommend this game. I got it for $6 on sale. Got all the DLC that came with it. There is a pack, and I think it's called it has remaster of Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, and it has Arkham Knight with it, and the whole thing costs like $6. If you were gonna buy this game, I would recommend that copy of it. And again, it's $6 when it's on sale. It's not always on. It's not always on sale, but you can find it every now and then. I kind of wish I had gotten that version, but the one that I got is works just as well. So I did all of the achievements, completed the game, played it on Xbox One. That's another caveat. I did play it on Xbox One. It works pretty well on that game. It does have a few bugs, but most of the bugs that I ran into were, more comedic, more funny. They were goofy glitches. Nothing that broke the game. But this game did have a really hard time running on PC because there were huge game breaking bugs on it for PC, and I don't know if Rocksteady or whoever works on this game now. I don't know if they fixed all of those bugs, right? So if you're gonna get this game, it's probably better to get it on a console rather than on PC. But I really don't know because I haven't played it on PC. So again, I completed the game, got all of the achievements. Would I recommend that a person complete this game? Me personally, I would say if you're gonna play this game, I think it's worth 100%ing the first time and just a regular playthrough because that's like pretty fun and you get pretty much the whole experience in that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend completing it for the new game plus stuff, and some of the achievements are kind of stupid, for lack of a better word. Now, one of the reasons why I wouldn't necessarily recommend beating the whole game twice, if you beat the game twice and you do it 100%, you unlock this prestige suit, and it's the Batman suit. I think it's a darker shade of black, and it has a golden bat symbol on the middle of its chest. Looks really nice, but it's not worth beating the game twice for, especially since, from what I understand, there is no new game plus plus. Like, meaning you can only play this game twice, and once you play it twice, that's it. You can't go back a third time with your new nice suit, right? So that's one of my biggest complaints. If the prestige suit was gonna be an unlockable, I think it makes sense to have made it unlockable after beating the game completely one time rather than twice. Just my opinion, because there's really nothing to use it on other than like the AR challenges. Now, there was one achievement. I hate it. I hate it so much. It's the achievement, like if you have access to the statistics of the achievements, you can see which one is the least unlocked for people, the least achieved. It's called the Curtain Falls. It's easily the hardest achievement in this game. Basically, you have to play on this combat map, and you need to defeat 4 rounds of enemies. Basically, you have to have free flow. You have to get a combo. That combo cannot break in all 4 rounds, and you have to do it 4 times. You have to do it with Batman, Robin, Nightwing, and Catwoman. Now, for me, I'm just gonna tell you how it is. For Batman, Robin, and Catwoman, it was actually kind of okay for me, and that's because I've played all of the Arkham games, so I've gotten pretty good at the combat in this game. I didn't have too much of a hard time with Batman, Robin, and Catwoman. However, for some reason, I don't know why, and other people have had this problem too, and I really don't know what it is. I have an idea of what it might be. For some reason, with Nightwing, it is very difficult to get that achievement. I don't know what I think of what it might be is that Nightwing might be a slower fighter than the other three. And what makes this combat achievement so stupid is that the two easiest things that would break me from a combo was that I would try to attack certain enemies, and if you hit one of the brutes, or if you hit a shield, or if you hit an electric shock stick thing, you lose your combo. And that can happen very easily because when you get to a really high combo, the combo. So, okay, how it works, how this game works, when you're fighting, before you even have a combo, most of the enemies are pretty slow. But the higher that your combo gets, the faster that the combo gets, and the faster that the enemies get. So once you hit like 50, a combo of like 50 or 70, the enemies get really fast. and they will just if you're not absolutely in the zone and perfect every single time, you're probably going to get hit by a brute that's very fast or a shield guy that's very fast. What often would happen is I would be like, oh, I'm going to hit this thug who is not holding anything. I'm just going to hit him and it's going to be fine. And then Batman or whoever I was playing as would like start attacking and he would hit someone else. He would hit a shield or he would hit a brute. And then the combo would drop and I'd be on round 4 and I'd be like, oh, I got to do this all over again. Um, when I did it with all the other characters, I could get it done within half an hour, maybe less. When I did it with Nightwing, for some reason, I don't know why, it took me like 5 hours, I would say, just to get this really dumb achievement. So I wouldn't recommend getting all the achievements unless you really like this game and you're just a driven completionist like me. Um, and for me, I feel like being a completionist is a curse rather than a blessing. But anyway, that's my intro for this video. When people talk about their favorite types of superheroes, there's usually two characters that rise to the top. And it's usually Spiderman or Batman. Now, me personally, of those two, my personal favorite is Spider-Man. And there's reasons for that. But Batman is like a really close second. Now I wanted to talk about, kind of Batman in general, but more specifically I kind of want to talk about Batman within the Arkham series by Rocksteady. And more specifically him in this game, Arkham Knight. I would say overall, having played this game technically twice, right? Because the first time I played it when it first came out, played it with my best friend Steve, and we just spent like an entire day just playing through that game when we were hanging out, and we both had a really good time. And we went out of our way to get like the true ending, collected all of the Riddler trophies, did all of the side quests, all that fun stuff, and it was a really good time. I have some fond memories of that whole entire experience. Fast forward some years later, I believe this game released in 2015, and so now I'm making this video in 2025, 10 years later. Still played the game, beat it all through. My personal goal this time was just to get all the achievements. Overall, I would say I recommend this game, even still, right? It's still good quality, still looks good, still fun. It does have its flaws, and we'll talk about that too. So I got Arkham Knight, got all of the DLC, all that fun stuff, played through it, and I just wanted to share my thoughts on the game overall. Now I spent some time thinking about why is it that people like Batman so much? Because again, of the top two superheroes that people mentioned, it's generally Spider-Man and Batman. So why do people like Batman so much? Now I listened to some videos, did a bit of research on him. One thing that I kind of hear every now and then is that you have these like modern day like legends, like modern day myths. America, we have a few myths. We don't have a lot of myths because we're a relatively young nation. But a modern myth, at least for our nation, is Batman. In my opinion, I think he deserves that title because, Batman, pretty much everybody knows who Batman is. In my opinion, I think one big reason that so many people like Batman, in essence, I think it's because he lives in such a dark and evil city, Gotham City, right? And despite the oppressive darkness and evil in that city, Batman makes the decision, right, to be good. Despite all of the evil and cruelty in that world, in that setting, he chooses to be good, to save and protect innocent lives, and to bring justice to criminals, to people who would hurt others, right, needlessly. I think that's really what it is. Because Batman, he really struggles with evil. He struggles against evil outside of him, but he also struggles with the evil within him. I was listening to a video by History Channel. They were talking about Dark Knight. I believe it was The Dark Knight, a movie that came out in 2008. And one of the things that they talked about was Batman's rogue gallery, all the villains. Because all of the villains, in some way, they're kind of like a mirror reflection of what Batman could be if he chose to be evil, if he chose to not be good, right? I think like one clear way that you can kind of see this is if you look at Penguin, if you look at Cobblepot. He's this, this rich bureaucrat. He has, a good amount of money, right? And, when you're rich, right, when you're wealthy, you can use your wealth to do good in the world, or you can use your wealth to, commit evil, to harm others, right? And very clearly, Penguin chooses to use all of his money for selfish gain to hurt others, whereas Bruce Wayne uses his money to, be involved in philanthropy, to do good for humanity. And to make profit, of course, right? But the point is, Batman uses his resources to help humanity, to make things better. Another element that makes Batman so compelling is that he So, okay, I'm going to talk about a little bit of overlap between Spider-Man and Batman, right? Spider-Man, when it comes to him being Peter Parker, he loses Uncle Ben. In many of the comics tellings of his origins, right? Spider-Man gains his powers. As Peter Parker, he fails to stop this burglar, right? This robber. And that robber escapes, ends up shooting Uncle Ben and kills him. And Spider-Man feels this deep guilt of like, had I just stopped him, Uncle Ben would still be alive. So he feels immense guilt for Uncle Ben's death. For Bruce Wayne, for Batman, it's a similar-ish thing, but it's different, right? Because Bruce Wayne, he's a child, goes down a dark alley with his parents, right? And his parents are both gunned down in cold blood, and Bruce Wayne is left alive, and Bruce Wayne is left with the death of his parents, and he's left with this, he's been traumatized, and he carries this trauma with him basically for the rest of his life. Despite that pain and that suffering and that loss, Batman has this deep drive of this horrible evil thing that happened to me. I cannot allow it to happen to other people. And it's actually kind of, he takes it to an extreme. The reason I say he takes it to an extreme is because multiple times in Arkham Knight, you'll hear Batman say, like, I think Barbara Gordon gets captured, and he's immediately like, it's my fault. I should have done more. Later on, there's all these guards or all these people at Ace Chemicals, these innocent lives, right? They've been killed by the thugs, by the criminals. Batman finds them, and again, he's like, oh, this is my fault. I should have done more. I should have stopped them. Batman really had no control over those instances for the most part, right? This evil befell those innocent lives. He had no power over it, and he still takes on this burden of like, it's my fault. I should have done more. I should have saved them. When it comes to this game, I just want to take a brief moment to talk about Batman's identity, because in certain comics or in certain games, there's a lot of exploration of Batman of like, who is this man? Is he Bruce Wayne or is he Batman? What is the mask and what is the man, right? I would say at least in this game, Batman is the man and Bruce Wayne is the mask. And it makes sense for this game because, it's an action game. It needs to focus more on Batman and the action and the fighting and all that fun stuff, right? So like a lot of the times, Batman is just very focused on being a hero, on being the legend. You don't get a whole lot of like, oh, what is Bruce Wayne gonna do about this situation? Well, how is Bruce Wayne gonna contribute to the goodness in the world? You don't really see too much in this iteration of Batman. And this is made more clear towards the end, but I don't want to jump too far ahead just yet. Now, in Arkham Knight, this takes place shortly after all the events that happened in Arkham City. Rumors spread throughout the city that Batman is the one that killed Joker, which is not true, but that's a rumor that gets spread a lot, right? Now, in one of the files within the game, it says that after Joker dies, Batman actually commits even more aggressively to his crime fighting, because now there's a power vacuum within Gotham. Joker's dead, and that there's the temptation that the criminals may want to rise up and fill that power vacuum, right? And so Batman knows this, he's aware of this, and he's just fighting crime as aggressively as he can to help fight back that power vacuum to make sure that it stays empty. Now, he's been infected with Joker's blood, and this is kind of like where things get a little weird. I think we all know why they have Batman be infected with Joker's blood in this game, and it's so that the writers can have a reason to put the Joker in this game. And that's perfectly fine. I'm actually okay with it because I understand that when it comes to anything that's Batman related, when it comes to writing, it feels like there's a need or this desire to have the Joker within the setting because the Joker is a very compelling opposite to Batman. So if you have a Batman story without the Joker, I think for many people it feels kind of like something's lacking, like something's missing. Some people don't like that Joker's in everything. Some people don't mind. Me personally, I didn't mind too much. And if you agree or disagree, it's perfectly fine. Everybody has a right to their opinion, right? For the Joker, I kind of like, to some degree, how they portray him in this game because he spends a lot of his time taunting and mocking Bruce Wayne and mocking Batman. He does it constantly, but at the same time, he doesn't do it so much. There are a few jokes and gags that he pulls off in the game that the player will probably enjoy. And he also, to some degree, actually does encourage Batman through parts of the game. Whether he means to or not encourage him, that's a different thing, but there's a specific line where the Arkham Knight gets out a gun, shoots Batman in the chest, and he sets these tanks loose against Batman, right? And the Joker says this line, "This guy doesn't know you hardly at all. He thinks a bullet and a few tanks are gonna take you down? It's like he doesn't know you at all." So it's a nice little encouraging thing where in a sense, the Joker believes in Batman. He's like, I know you're capable of a lot. Like, don't let this little punk beat you. That's basically what he's saying, right? So it's very interesting because I think the Joker could have been written as just this very malicious, evil threat in the back of Batman's mind. But the writers have a little bit of fun with it. They make him enjoyable at times, and they make him encouraging at times. And I think it's pretty interesting and creative, in my opinion. So I wanted to spend some time talking about some of the villains in the Arkham series, particularly this game. In the DLC, you get to go and capture Killer Croc. One of the things that I find interesting about Killer Croc is that he has been mutating. He has this mutation, right? It makes his skin thick, gives him kind of like this crocodile reptilian type of look. And the mutation that's changed him has been becoming more aggressive. It's been changing him. It's been accelerating. And I kind of take this as a loss of a continual loss of his humanity in a sense, right? In Arkham Origins, which is supposed to be like the first game in the series, chronologically, right? When you see Killer Croc, he looks very much like he's very humanoid. He just looks like a really big guy, really big buff guy, and he has scaly skin, and he has a little bit of a reptile-like face, right? In Arkham Asylum and City, his teeth are a lot sharper and bigger. He looks much more monstrous. And in this game, he's gained quite a bit of size. People comment on like, whoa, have you seen how massive this guy is? The scales on his back are much more sharp. So you get the sense that he's much more monstrous in Arkham Knight. One of the things about Killer Croc that you need to know is that he's still a man. He's not a monster necessarily, and he's still a man. And one of the things that he does that he really shouldn't be doing. One of the things that he does is that he turns to cannibalism. He likes to consume human flesh. And I think the way this is kind of how I interpret this. I think the fact that he consumes so much human flesh it's really the element to him that makes him lose his humanity. It's not necessarily his mutation, although his mutation does that too. It's more the fact that he would resort to eating human flesh. Because that's something that like many people, most people, I would say, will not turn to. Even people who are a bit disturbed. That's just something that you don't do. And that's something that Killer Croc does. He turns to cannibalism. This mutation is worsening in him, and he's become more monstrous. He's losing his humanity. And for me, I just thought that was really interesting. Another character that I find interesting, he's the most disturbing of all of the villains. And I'm talking about Professor Pig. The way that you find Professor Pig is that there are a lot of corpses. There's human bodies that are held up in these certain places. They've been killed, and you need to you kind of set up like a crime scene sort of, right? You investigate. Now, Batman can't really do like a blood draw and check their DNA because Professor Pig is the kind of person that experiments on people, and the experiments that he does on these people corrupts their DNA, so he has to do like a deep tissue scan. So Professor Pig is, I think, undoubtedly the most disturbing villain in this game because multiple of the characters will comment on how sick he is. The Joker himself actually comments on how truly insane this character is. Now, I did a little bit of research. In this version of Professor Pig, he's a little bit different from the others. Basically, it's this man who he has this schizophrenic break, and he becomes obsessed with perfection. It's suggested that one of the reasons he's so obsessed with perfection is because his parents, most particularly his mother, push this idea of perfection onto him so much. When you capture Professor Pig and you toss him into jail, he constantly says things like, oh, I was so close to being perfect. I was so close. I'm a failure. And he actually, when you call him a failure, when you say that he fails, he is so disgusted with himself that he vomits in the back of the Batmobile when you're taking him to the Gotham Police Department. So that's a depiction of how compelled he is to be perfect. Now, that's actually not necessarily the worst part of it, because, that's pretty bad, but that's not the worst part. The worst part about Professor Pig, and I think you can kind of tell that this is pretty bad because they don't really put this in the, like a cutscene or like a dialogue in the game. It's more like because when you put Professor Pig away, you unlock these tape recordings, and it's Professor Pig talking about his past and the things that he's done. So you really only access that if you're interested in certain characters, right? And you find out that Professor Pig finds this woman, right? and it's suggested that he forces himself onto this woman because he just thinks that she's so beautiful and so perfect, and she becomes pregnant, has his son, and Professor Pig he very much cares about his son, and so he makes these tapes telling his son about like all the things that he's doing, but he has this thing where he believes that he's talking to his mother in his mind, it seems like, and he says himself like, "Oh, mother is a demanding woman. She demands perfection." And of course, this woman that Pig has fallen in lust with, she's not perfect because nobody is perfect. And so because she's not perfect, it's suggested that he experiments on her, tries to turn her into a Dollatron. I'll explain what that is in a bit. Or it's suggested that he just kills her. So it's really dark stuff. The crime that Pig is committing is that he's kidnapping these people, and Pig really wants for people to be perfect. So he does surgery because he's a skilled surgeon. Pig's belief is that in order for people to be perfect, they have to all be made the same. They can't be unique. You know, all of us, we're all unique. We have unique features. For Pig, everybody must be the same. So he actually makes all of the people genderless. He performs surgery, right? Gets rid of the, you can assume what he does, right? And then it's suggested that he lobotomizes them. And then Pig takes these masks and he puts it on these victims. He calls them Dollatrons, right? And that mask is forever bonded to their face. Very clearly the most demented character in this game. And that's saying a lot. Very briefly, I kind of want to talk about one of the more sad characters in this game. There's a scientist. His name is Kirk Langstrom, and he's the Man-Bat. He's this big old bat creature that's flying in Gotham City's skies, and you find him, and you want to cure him of his condition, right? So you do some research, you do some investigation, you find his lab, you find out that Kirk and his wife, Francine, I believe is her name, they're trying to develop a cure for deafness because Kirk himself is actually progressively becoming more deaf. They do these experiments where they're trying to combine human DNA with vampire bat DNA because vampire bats have very, very excellent hearing, right? So they're trying to reverse the hearing loss. Of course, the experiment goes terribly wrong. Who could have known, right? Who could have seen that coming? And instead of curing Kirk of his deafness, it turns him into this bat creature monster thing, right? And essentially, Kirk ends up killing his wife unintentionally because he loses his control over himself. He's loosed onto Gotham. He escapes. Batman goes into the lab, creates a cure, gives it to Kirk. Kirk turns back into a man. Batman takes Kirk into the jail, basically, right? Just to be confined, just to be put in a place by himself. And you can tell that Batman pities Kirk because he's very somber when he speaks to him. Kirk wakes up after he's unconscious, and he says, like, "Where's my wife? Where's Francine?" And then Batman says, like you killed her, or she's dead. And you can tell that Kirk is just devastated and broken, and he sobs. He cries in his cell. And for me, that's usually the part of the game where it kind of hits me the most, because I can't imagine how terrible it must be for someone to unintentionally destroy their spouse. You know, that has to be like the person closest to you, the person that you want to share your life with. That's it's tragic, you know, especially since him and his wife had such good-natured intentions with their experiment, with their medical research, and then it comes to this, right? Very, very tragic. Now, briefly, I want to talk about a big criticism for this game. A lot of people that I've listened to and a lot of discourse surrounding this game, a lot of people do not like the Batmobile. Or maybe not so much that they don't like it, but they kind of wish that there was less of the Batmobile in this game. Me personally, I don't mind it too much. The only thing that I kind of don't like about the addition of the Batmobile is that... Okay, so... okay, this is one of the things I don't like about the Batmobile. It's used for a lot of missions, which that in itself is okay, but later in the game, after you defeat the Arkham Knight, Deathstroke takes over the army that Scarecrow and Arkham Knight have built up, and Deathstroke is trying to destroy Batman through that army. The final boss fight for Deathstroke is just a tank battle with the Batmobile versus his own tank. It's kind of disappointing because in Arkham Origins, I would say the best fight in that game, the best boss fight in that game is the one against Deathstroke, because it's a lot of like countering and attacking and reactions, you know, like trying to react properly to everything that Deathstroke is doing, and it's a very fast and satisfying fight to complete. And then here in this game, all you do is you just destroy his tank, and then he like pops out of the tank in an epic way, like he's about to duel with you, and then Batman just punches him in the face, one punch, and he's out, and that's it. So for me personally, that's the only thing that was disappointing about the addition of the Batmobile is the fact that it's used as such a disappointing boss battle for Deathstroke specifically. Because for the most part, you just use the Batmobile to traverse through the city. You do use it to take out these vehicles. You use it to take out Firefly. You use it for a lot of the story missions. Actually, if anything, maybe that could be another thing is that it is used for a lot of the story missions where you're just fighting a lot of tanks. So if you're okay with that, then it's fine. But if you don't really enjoy it all that much, you're stuck with the tank battles, and it's it can be a problem. So just keep that in mind. You can kind of tell that the developers wanted to make this a satisfying ending or an enjoyable ending to the Arkham series. This game is a much more dark, I would say, than the other two games or the other three games, right? Of course, I've already told you about the backstory of some of the characters, and that's kind of dark in its own way, right? There's this constant theming of psychological horror, which makes sense because, with Scarecrow as the main villain of this game, his whole thing is fear, right? Using fear to incapacitate your enemies. But a big theme throughout this whole game is this psychological horror, this fear of losing yourself, of losing your mind. The most obvious place where you can see this is in Batman himself. Batman's been infected with Joker's blood. When the fear gas hits Batman, he starts to have a harder time pushing back this Joker mentality that's stuck within his mind. Because Batman's fear is becoming something like Joker, killing someone and not being able to stop himself and becoming a killer, a serial killer. But you see this in other places too, like again, Professor Pig. He lobotomizes his victims. They're no longer a person, they're just turned into this generic Dollatron type thing. Mad Hatter, one of the DLC characters, Mad Hatter's thing is that he hypnotizes and influences people with technology, with his mind control, right? And that's another element of like losing yourself. Man-Bat, Kirk turns into a bat, loses his sense of self, destroys his wife, right? And that follows the same theme. Killer Croc to a degree, right? His body is mutating more and more and more. He consumes more human flesh and he continually loses his humanity. So you have this theme, this fear of losing yourself, losing who you are. Now there's one character that I kind of wish had returned to Arkham Knight, and he kind of does, but not really. One of my favorite villains from Batman is Bane, because Bane, at least in the comics, he was always meant to be obviously a physical challenge for Batman, but he's also an intellectual challenge for Batman. Some iterations of Bane turn him into like a steroid mad bodybuilder type character, almost like a monster, and because he takes so much of the venom, it destroys his brain. And that element is interesting too, but I like Bane more when he's both a physical challenge and an intellectual challenge for Batman. And you kind of see that a little bit more in Arkham Origins. You don't see it too much here. In this game, he's just kind of a footnote. In the game, when you get all of the Riddler trophies, you unlock backstory for certain things that are happening in Gotham. They're called Gotham stories. So in one of those stories, you find out that Bane is trying to become clean from using Venom ever again. He doesn't use it anymore. He goes to Santa Prisca. His goal, essentially, is to destroy all of these drug lords, these crime lords in that area. And he is killing all of them. So his way of fighting crime, basically, is killing his enemies, right? And it's actually kind of grotesque because it's suggested that he has, like, I guess wherever he lives or wherever he's working, he has these pikes, these spikes, and then he puts the decapitated heads of his enemies on these spikes, and he just has like one or two more drug lords to defeat. But in the game, it's kind of suggested that this is a happy ending for him. But I also find it kind of interesting that Bane is like this anti-hero to Batman, where Batman's rule is, I'm never going to kill anyone. People can be redeemed. I think, in my opinion, that's another thing that makes Batman so compelling, is that he does have that no-kill rule. And I think it works best if he has this belief that any person can be redeemed, or any person can change themselves, so they don't have to be a villain all the time, they can redeem themselves. And you do see that with Poison Ivy in this game. Bane makes an interesting counterpart to that, because Bane is just, I'm going to get rid of crime, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to be a vigilante, and I'm going to destroy my enemies, basically, right? So it's an interesting juxtaposition, an interesting counterpart to Batman and his vigilantism. Now, briefly, I want to go back to the whole why I like Spider-Man a little bit more than Batman. Batman is great. I do like Batman. When I think of Batman, I think of a man who's constantly struggling against evil. He's doing his best to be a good man. He and a lot of times when I see Batman in my mind, like in art or in a movie or anything like that, he always has this like anguished look of like trying to defeat evil. Like I picture him as like think of Atlas, right? Atlas is like this Greek god or this Greek figure, right? And he holds the world on his back and he has this struggled, pained, anguished look cuz he has this heavy load on his back. That's kind of what I think of when I think of Batman. Batman has this he's constantly pushing himself, he's constantly pushing his himself to his physical limits, his intellectual limits. There's actually a comic that I think of every now and then, this panel where and it's very moving for me because it's a point where Batman fails and he feels so guilty. Batman, incredibly strong person, and he's to a ridiculous degree, right? But one of the reasons that he is that way, one of the reasons why he pushes himself so much is because there's a comic story where there's this little girl who's stuck in a cave, and that cave is filling with water, and there's this rock that's blocking her way out, right? So she can't escape. And Batman doesn't have anything to move this gigantic rock that's blocking her path, right? So he's trying to lift this rock, and he can't do it because it's just too heavy for him. And so the cave is filling with water, and the girl basically drowns, and Batman's like, "No, I need to save her," and he keeps pushing himself to lift it, but he just can't. And of course, the he fails to save the girl, and so it's suggested like later on after that terrible event that Batman really pushes himself when he's exercising because he doesn't ever want to fail in that way again. So when I think of Batman, I think of him like being in this constant anguish of trying to defeat evil, trying to better himself so that he can be better equipped to save the world, to save innocent lives, to make sure that no one ever experiences the tragedy that he experienced as a helpless child, right? Now, in this game, in Arkham Knight, it kind of focuses more on Batman being like a brutal man of vengeance. He's always fighting criminals, breaking their bones, and of course, all of it is non-lethal, all right? So you gotta understand, he never kills anyone. Even if he's in his Batmobile and he's driving 100 miles per hour and he hits a guy, don't worry. They've been electrocuted. They're unconscious. They're not dead, okay? That's another thing that people kind of make fun of in this game. Me personally, I kind of wish we had a Batman game like this that was just a little bit more focused on Batman saving people and saving civilians. Now, you do get that in this game with the firefighters. There's all these innocent firefighters, heroes really, right? And they've been captured by these thugs, and it's your job as Batman, right, to save them. That's one of my personal favorite missions throughout the game is like coming in, beating the thugs, and saving the innocent life, an innocent civilian, right? I personally wish there was a little bit more of that. So one of the reasons why I like Spider-Man a little bit more than Batman is just because Spider-Man is a much more hopeful and bright character, even though he has his own sense of tragedy. He hasn't really done this more recently, right? But in the comics and in the movies, he would save a civilian's life, and he would say something like, "Oh, I'm just your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man," right? So he had this very approachable sense to him that, like, if a New Yorker ran into him, he would probably, high five them or he would be nice to them. He's a person. He's kind of a regular person, but with Spider-Man powers, right? With Batman, it's a bit different because Batman has to be like this gritty, terrifying figure for the criminals. The criminals, they're superstitious and cowardly lots, right? If you give the criminals something to fear, they won't commit crime. And so that's Batman's whole thing. He's kind of like, him and Scarecrow are similar in that they prey on the fear of other people. For Batman, he preys on the fear of his enemies, of criminals, to make them so afraid of committing crime that they won't even do it to begin with. That's kind of what he was going for. And so it's interesting because in some comics, you'll see Batman run into like children and he's trying to save a child or like someone that's very young, right? And at first, the child might be absolutely terrified because there's this big Batsman, right? That's just beating on these thugs, and that's a scary thing to see. And the ones that I like more is where Batman goes up to that child after saving them, and he has a very peaceful and welcoming, because you can't see too much of his face, right? But he's very gentle with kids because he understands that he's terrifying for these grown men who are evil and trying to harm innocent people. And these poor kids, he's trying to help them out, so he's much more gentle and compassionate towards those kids. So I feel like there's a compassion aspect to Batman that's very important to who he is that you don't really see in this game. And it does make sense because he's being infected by Joker's blood, and by all these years of being Batman, he's at his limit. He's much more brutal in how he fights crime in this game, and that goes into the story. But I would really like a Batman game where he can be this gritty and vengeful character, but he can still be this good person towards innocent lives. I don't know if I can explain it much better than that, but yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts on the whole thing. So overall, that's what I would say about this game. Would recommend you play it. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please, hit the like button or comment or subscribe or do all of them. I'm not gonna stop you. You could do all three. Now, I would appreciate feedback on my videos because, I'm getting back. I used to make videos back in the day, and then I stopped. But I would like feedback. Let me know if you like the video. Let me know if there's somewhere where I could improve. If you do like the video, let me know what specifically maybe you liked about it, or just let me know what you think about this game overall, or what you think about Batman. Anything at all. I usually read the comments. I might respond. I might reply. But I'm pretty good about reading the comments. But thank you again for watching. I appreciate you being here. Hopefully I said something entertaining and valuable for you. The last thing I want to do is waste anyone's time. So appreciate you being here. And hope you all have a good day. And I'll see you all later.